Harley Benton has been in the habit of adding roasted maple necks to their guitars lately, and they've finally reached their extended range with the new R-458 Roasted. Coming in a standout chameleon finish, its combination of features, looks, and price make it a very promising addition to the lineup. But how much does it matter? Is the roasted maple neck worth the extra cost? Does it address any of the issues from the original R-458? And most importantly, does the guitar live up to its stunning visuals, or does it fall flat where it matters the most? Let's take a look and find out. Nowadays, just about every guitar company out there has at least experimented with releasing extended range instruments. Obviously, the likes of Ibanez and ESP helped to popularize the 7 and 8 string guitar space in the first place, while the likes of Kiesel and Strandberg have gone a more contemporary route and have helped repopularize the headless guitar market that originated in the 1980s. Even the most stalwart of traditional brands has released modern-leaning guitars. Fender has released 7-string guitars under the Squier name as far back as the early 2000s. Gibson has their collaboration of 6 and 7-string guitars with Matt Hafey of Trivium under the Epiphone brand. And Paul Reed Smith hit pay dirt with their 6 and 7-string signature models from Mark Holcomb of Periphery. Even budget brands have been playing to the 7 and 8-string market, including perennial favorite of this channel, Harley Benton. For years, they have been releasing extended range models across all of their price ranges, from the budget-friendly R-457 and R-458, the more upscale multi-scale models, and the high-end Amarok 7. They've also got some models they've discontinued in that time, including the SC7 single cut and TE7 Telecaster style, both which had fan frets. Okay, I don't know who I've got to talk to about this, but who do I have to talk to at Harley Benton to get those guitars back on the market? They were sweet, and I'd love to have some of those for my collection, so just call me and we'll make something happen. The timing is actually great for Harley Benton to release a new extended range guitar, as they've been updating a number of their lineups with roasted maple necks as of late, mainly due to the absence of rosewood because of the sites regulations. Not only does it have several functional benefits over regular maple, it has a much more distinctive look, which is the name of the game for the guitar we're reviewing today, the R-458 Roasted Fan Fret 8-string guitar. Decked out in an eye-popping blue chameleon finish, it's loaded with appointments catering to the modern extended range player. A comfort carved superstrap body, a nice multi-scale fretboard, a monorail hardtail bridge with individually adjustable saddles, and a pair of chunky soap bar pickups aiming to offer crystal cleans and searing leads. While it's a bit more expensive than the regular R-458, coming in a little bit over $300 shipped to the US, it's a very distinctive looking guitar, and one that's sure to stand out in the sea of blacked out budget extended range models. But is it worth the extra cost over the original R-458? And more importantly, does the roast maple neck actually justify the hype? That's what we're going to be taking a look at today. In this review of the R-458 Roasted, I'm going to be covering all the specs of the guitar, giving you sound demos for everything you're going to want to hear, letting you know the guitar's strengths and weaknesses, and offering up any hardware that you may want to replace in order to get the most out of this guitar. However, going forward, I will no longer be including a section of alternative recommendations just in case this guitar doesn't quite do it for you. And there are two reasons for that. Number one, and the simpler reason, is it puts less work on me when it comes to producing these videos. But more importantly, number two, is according to my YouTube analytics, not a lot of people are watching that section anyway, and it's causing an overall drop-off in viewer retention. So by cutting that out, not only do I get to keep the videos shorter, but hopefully I will get to keep you viewers around longer, which will make the YouTube algorithm happier, which will help the channel to grow. But enough of my babbling. Let's jump right in and get into our deep dive of the R-458 Roasted. So here we are with the R-458 Roasted, and if it's not already evident, this is a seriously gorgeous guitar. There's a lot to like about it visually, but the most obvious feature the players are going to gravitate towards is the color of the finish. It's an extremely eye-catching finish, and even the 4K video I'm filming this on doesn't quite do it justice. It's this nice teal green metallic when you look at it head on, but as you start to turn the body off axis, it transitions to blue and eventually this really nice shade of violet. It's an incredible finish job, not only for the color, but for the quality of it as well. It's virtually flawless. The only anything I could find on the finish is a very tiny little nick, maybe a pop bubble or something right here on the lower horn scoop. In fact, it's so tiny, I almost didn't even notice it. This is the first guitar with a chameleon finish in Harley Benton's lineup, and I'm so impressed that I would love to see it show up on another line in the future. Maybe something like an SC Custom or a CST-24 with a chameleon finish would look just awesome. Since I'm already talking about it, let's go ahead and continue with the body here. It is made out of basswood, and like the other guitars in the R line, it's got this nice superstrap body shape with the carved edges around it to add a little bit of contour. And as expected out of a basswood body, it is pretty light. Despite that, it doesn't feel imbalanced at all, even with this big old roasted maple neck on it. It's very comfortable to play in the lap, and it's just as comfortable to wear and play on a strap. So if you're planning to use this guitar for live gigs, you're not going to break your back and shoulders while you're playing it over the course of a show. Excellent work here from Harley Benton. Next, let's take a look at the neck, which, okay, honestly, I know a lot of players are going to fixate on the finish of the guitar, but this neck is the real highlight. This thing is incredible. The roasted maple looks absolutely fantastic. It feels fantastic in the hand, with this nice, light, natural finish to it that makes it really easy to navigate up and down without feeling sticky or raw. The fretwork on this thing is unbelievable. Every fret is nicely rounded, there are no sharp edges to be found, and all the way up and down the neck, it's incredibly smooth. I've ordered over a dozen different Harley Bentons from Thomann in the past year alone, and the neck on this one is by far the best neck that I've received from them. It goes without saying that this is a multi-scale neck, and it will take a little bit of getting used to. So if you haven't played one before, I recommend heading over to your nearest big box guitar retailer, Guitar Center, Sam Ash, Sweetwater, wherever it may be, and trying out something with fan frets just to get a feel for it. You've got 25.5 inches on the treble end, so it's a standard strat length, and it'll feel really intuitive when you're doing leads or any high voice chords if you're doing like ambient clean stuff. At the bass end, it's 27 inches all the way at the bottom, so it's not completely baritone length, but it is long enough that the low B and F sharp do stay tight when you're hitting those big chunky palm muted chugs. Speaking of frets, the fretboard is capped with 24 medium jumbo frets, which I will admit is a little bit disappointing. I was hoping to have some jumbo frets just for some extra substance to dig into while I am playing, but all things considered, the medium jumbos really aren't bad, and they add nicely to the overall impression of the fretboard. The neck profile is another highlight. Since it's an 8-string guitar, it is expectedly wide and also expectedly thin. It's a very fast-feeling D shape, but it doesn't drastically flatten out here at the back of the neck, instead keeping a nice smooth curve across all 8 strings. Even with how thin it is, there's still some substance to it when you hold it. It doesn't feel like an Ibanez, or worse yet, one of those necks that has absolutely nothing to it like a Strictly 7. It's a logical progression from the R-456's neck, and if you enjoyed the neck on that guitar, this will be right up your alley. Up here at the headstock, we have this nice 4x4 split design with a very Schecter-esque appearance, and it's capped off by a set of 8 black die-cast tuners. I've talked about these in my previous reviews. They're pretty standard fare for a lot of budget Harley Bentons, and while there's certainly nothing fancy, these ones actually feel really good. The rotation on them is smooth, they turned very easily when I was tuning the guitar to pitch, and other than the low B string tuner feeling a bit stiff, these are perfectly acceptable. The nut, according to Harley Benton, is made out of new bone and is angled to match the fan of the first fret. For those unfamiliar, new bone is a variant of the tusk material designed by Graphtec and is intended to be a viable replacement for the cheaper plastic or corian that you find on budget-friendly guitars. It's very well cut, it sits flush with all of the dimensions of the fretboard, and it feels considerably better than the usual plastic. There's no buzz or droning on any of the open strings, and all of them fit perfectly into the pre-cut slots. This is my first experience with new bone on a guitar, and if this is what I should expect of it as material, I'm very impressed. On the opposite end of the guitar, we have the bridge, which is this really nice monorail design where each string has its own individual assembly. It's the same design that's used on other multi-scale guitars that Harley Benton offers, so if you're familiar with those, you already know what you're getting. Each one is nicely machined with comfortable rounded edges, and the saddle is integrated in a way that feels like part of the whole mechanism. I love this design for a bridge, and it's really comfortable to play. Now on to the pickups. The R-458 comes with a pair of soap bar style pickups that are slightly angled to match the rest of the guitar. Unlike the multi-scale 8, which comes with slightly longer pickups meant for 9-string guitars, these pickups have regular 8-string soap bar dimensions, so upgrades or replacements are going to be a lot easier to source. The Harley Benton website describes these as high gain, but in my experience I find they're a bit more moderate in output, which, depending on your expectations, might be a bit disappointing. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. As opposed to being big, crunchy, modern gain monsters, they feel more appropriate for that classic gent kind of tone. That mid-gain, very tight sound that pops off the strings with palm mutes and upstrokes. If you were expecting a huge, crushing Fishman kind of sound though, you're inevitably going to be disappointed. While I can't say for sure what kind of magnets are in these pickups, they feel like they're Alnico. If they are ceramic, they really don't have the tonal qualities of it. If I'm right, like I suspect, it explains why the neck pickup does so well for itself. You can pump it full of gain and effects, and it really doesn't get mushy or blurry. While it does great for that, I'm not very convinced by mid-gain or crunch tones on it, as they just don't have enough weight. Cleans are nicely balanced across the neck, and they've got a cool round attack, but you'll want to stay on the brighter side with the cleans, because it can get dark sounding quickly, especially on the lowest strings. The bridge pickup actually handles better than I expected, especially on the low B and F sharp. Stock bridge pickups on extended range guitars have a tendency to feel muddy and flubby on these strings. This one is pretty manageable as long as you're careful with dialing in your low mids. I like this pickup even more on the upper strings, believe it or not, as it has a really nice bite to it without feeling thin or clacky. Clean tones on it are pretty palatable, which is nice. And the high gain tones have some body to them, but not a whole lot of cut, so you're probably going to have to dial in your amp's presence a bit more to really get that bite out of it. Combined in the middle position, the pickups get pretty plucky and you get that cool sort of bubbly sound, especially on the low strings, but the dark character of the pickups really starts to show itself here. It's got a cool attack for leads though, with just enough body to it that it feels like a mix of the two pickups as opposed to something different. As a whole, they feel a bit flat and dull, but they work quite well together, and if you don't want to upgrade, you can certainly get palatable tones out of them. The pickups are handled by a single volume, single tone, and a 3-way blade switch, which I will admit is really disappointing. After the R-446 came with that awesome 5-way blade switch, I was hoping to see it again here, because single coil tones on 8-string guitar like this would have been just awesome. And as it is, it's fine. The pots are a little bit stiff to turn, but I don't feel like they're going to break on me, and nothing is grinding against the body, so that's perfectly fine. On the back of the body here, we've got all the standard fare, a regular old backplate with 4 screws, the 8-string through ferrules that are staggered to match the rest of the neck, and this really nice all-access neck joint here with 5 bolts in it to help keep the neck in place. All things considered, this is a very, very impressive guitar, and while it's not perfect, the neck alone really just makes up for it. Seriously, I cannot say enough good things about this neck. It's so good. Now, I have to admit, when the guitar first arrived, I was very concerned something might have happened to it in shipping, because there was basically no padding anywhere around the guitar box. Usually when Thomann ships guitars, the shipping box has a bunch of butcher paper in it that helps prevent the guitar box from moving, but there was a single sheet in this shipping box, and it was at the very bottom, so it wasn't protecting anything at all. Fortunately, there was no damage to the exterior of the guitar box, and when I opened it up, the guitar itself was nicely protected in what appeared to be extra layers of foam padding. Other than the tiny little nick I mentioned on the back of the guitar, there was absolutely no damage to it anywhere, so crisis averted. While the shipping box didn't leave a very good impression, the guitar itself is fantastic. I can't believe this is a guitar from a budget-oriented Harley Benton line, as it feels better than guitars I've spent twice as much on from them. The action is great right off the bat, with a very gentle curve to the neck that prevents the action from ever getting too high, even all the way up to the 24th fret. I'm sure I could straighten the neck out just a little bit more to get the action lower, but where it's at, it is perfectly playable all the way up and down the neck. Every piece of hardware is rock solid too, including the tuners, which I usually have an issue with on these budget-oriented guitars. They're certainly better than I've seen from other inexpensive Harley Bentons, so for once, I'm actually not going to recommend upgrading the tuners. However, if you're a stickler for brand name, or you want that extra little bit of security and smoothness, you can always replace them for the likes of Godos or Grovers. The nut on the guitar is also exceptional, and unless yours arrives particularly poorly cut, I see no reason to upgrade this on the guitar either. Honestly, I don't know if you'd be able to find anything on the market that constitutes more than a side grade here. I've been able to find a couple of additional offerings from Graphtec, as well as some inexpensive bone nuts, but nothing that particularly seems worth the hassle. Believe it or not, the first thing I would change about this guitar is the strings. They're a little bit on the light side for a guitar that's all about tuning low. It starts with a 9 on the high E and scales down to a 65 on the low F sharp. And even with the multi-scale, it just doesn't feel like there's enough tension to them. So I would recommend jumping up to a slightly heavier set. A 10 to 74 set should do the job rather nicely, though if you are intending to tune even lower, it may be worth looking into heavier options than that. The bridge is great, so I see no reason to mess with that. And while the electronics are perfectly usable, players who want major crunch out of their pickups are inevitably going to be disappointed here. So I will recommend replacing the pickups, and this is the one major recommendation I feel I have to make. While there are some things the pickups do well, they're just not tight and aggressive in the way that I think a lot of 8-string players are going to be looking for. On top of that, it's easy enough to find drop-in replacements from the likes of EMG, Bare Knuckle, or Fishman. And if you're willing to shop the secondhand market, you can keep the overall budget for this guitar under $500. Harley Benton has done a fantastic job of introducing extended range guitars that remain popular with players, mainly due to their combination of upgradability and affordability. Searching on the Thomann website reveals that among the most popular selling 7 and 8-string guitars respectively are the regular versions of the R-457 and R-458, and for good reason. The R-458 Roasted is an excellent addition to the lineup, offering improved playability, additional quality of life features, and an incredibly distinctive look for not a whole lot more money. It does an excellent job bridging the gap between the less expensive guitars and the more expensive multi-scale 8. And until the day we get an Amarok 8 model, it's become my top recommendation for an 8-string guitar from Harley Benton, all things considered. But I want to know what you think. Were you impressed by what you heard out of this guitar? Are you interested in picking up one of these, or maybe another Harley Benton 8-string? Do you already have one? You're interested in leaving your impressions? Let me know in the comments section down below, because I would love to hear what you've got to say. As always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. Every little bit helps for the YouTube algorithm. And more importantly, if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, so that way you'll know whenever a new review drops. I've got some stuff that is coming up here in the future that I am currently working on, But if you can't wait until then I recommend checking out this video right here. I think it'll have you covered in the meantime.